fairs to be administered by the Environment Department. The grant will fund a 2-year heat resilience planning study for the city of Boston.
Thank you. Docket 1000 will be referred to the Committee on Environment, Resiliency, and Parks. We'll now move on to docket 1001.
Docket 1001, message and order authorizing the city of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $220,000 in the form of a grant, Child Care Entrepreneur Fund, awarded by the Economic Development and Industrial Corporation of Boston, to be administered by the Office of Women's Advancement. The grant will fund assistance to home-based child care businesses in the city of Boston as they struggle to remain open.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This grant for $220,000 will be administered by the Office of Women of Advancement and will go towards assisting struggling home-based childcare businesses across Boston. While the City Council normally holds hearings for grants over a certain amount of dollars, the value of this grant provides that this grant will provide is crucial, and the need for it is immediate. Especially as we start to bring our students back to school, now more than ever, we need to have a robust childcare infrastructure. And I think it's really important for us to really make note that normally this will be a grant that would have a public hearing, and that we would have an opportunity to be really thoughtful and mindful of how we're utilizing these dollars, who are the businesses that are going to have access to these funds. And I think it's important that while we are approving this grant under these conditions that we happen to find ourselves in, that in the future, this is not a norm and a stage that we should set. And I look forward to, in the event, if we need to call upon a hearing in the post-audit to ensure that these dollars were allocated in ways that were reflective and responsive to the needs of our most vulnerable businesses, including minority business and immigrant owned. So I ask that we suspend and pass and allow this grant to move forward in the interest of ensuring that we are able to serve our most needy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1001. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Councilor Arroyo for docket 1001.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo, yes. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Braden.
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey.
Yes.
Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor Mejia.
Yes, sorry.
Councilor Mejia, yes. Councilor O'Malley.
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley, yes. And Councilor Wu.
Yes.
Councilor Wu, yes. Madam President, docket 1001 has passed with a unanimous vote.
Thank you so much. Docket 1001 has passed. We'll move on to docket 1002. Madam
Thank
Clerk?
you. Docket 1002, message and order authorizing the city of Boston to accept an amount of $176,194 in the form of a grant for the FY20 Port Security Grant Program awarded by the United States Department of Homeland Security to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund installation grant will fund installation and thermal optical equipment for those vessels and new equipment for Harbor Patrol Unit dive team.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. As Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seeking suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1002, which is a grant for $176,194. It's a grant we've received continuously in the past. It's for our port security grant program and to fund installation and repowering of the police department's harbor patrol unit vessels. And that's a total of 3 vessels and their thermal optics equipment, which the vessels use to patrol activity, particularly at night. BPD actually provides a 25% match on the grant. The funding will cover the cost of engines for 3 safe boats that provide security escorts, also for incoming liquefied natural gas tankers that transit the Boston Harbor at the USS Constitution on its 7 turnaround cruises every year. It also will support dive operations and SWAT team delivery and port security operations. Given the amount of the grant and the fact it's quite detailed and we've received it in the past, I'm seeking suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1002. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Counselor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1002. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Docket number 1002, Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Madam President, docket number 1002 has received a unanimous vote.
Thank you so much. Docket 1002 has passed, and we'll now move on to reports of committees, and we'll start with docket 0451.
Thank you. Docket 0451, the Committee on Environment, Sustainability and Parks, to which is referred on March 4th, 2020, docket number 0451. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $400,000 in the form of a grant for the Market Development Program awarded by the Mass Center for Excellence Corporation to be administered by the Environment Department. The grant will fund the city's procurement of a solar storage system at Moon Island, which will provide a critical training asset to the city and the region's emergency response and inspection services professionals. Submitted a report recommending it ought to pass.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes the chair of that committee. Counselor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. On September 3rd, the Committee on Environment, Sustainability and Parks held a hearing regarding a $400,000 sustainability grant from Mass Center for Excellence Corporation. It's joined by colleagues Counselor Liz Braden, Ed Flynn, and Counselor Nisa Sabi George. We also heard testimony from Joseph LaRusso, the Energy Efficiency Manager for the City of Boston. Mr. LaRusso stated this grant will assist in the funding of installation of solar and energy storage systems, some PV panels and batteries at the fire department's training facility at Moon Island. The solar and energy storage system will include commercial and residential size unit system that we use for training by BFD and other surrounding fire departments to better respond to emergency situations involving different solar systems. Yes, it will. And it's going to not only provide some storage, energy storage, but it's also going to make sure that we can deal with those should a fire emerge. We talk about building new environmental and renewable energy sources. So Margot and I respectfully ask that this docket pass and we get to work on this. And then one thing we had asked Mr. LaRusso is for a council tour of Moon Island when things return to some normalcy so that we can see this in action. But this is a great thing for the city. Not only does it promote environmentalism, but it also promotes safety. And what is better than that? Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Margot and Counselor O'Malley seek acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0451. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0451, Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley and Miss O'Malley.
Ms. Margot, we vote yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Counselor O'Malley and our wonderful Margot vote yes. Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Madam President, docket 0451 has received a unanimous vote.
Thank you so much. Docket 0451 has passed. We will now move on to matters recently heard for possible action. And let's start with docket 0935.
Docket 0935, order for hearing on pest control and illegal dumping in the city of Boston.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn, who is chair of the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. The Committee on City and Neighborhood Services held a hearing yesterday on pest control and illegal dumping. The hearing was sponsored by myself and Councilor Braden. The panelists included Commissioner Irish and Assistant Commissioner Leo Boucher from ISD, as well as Steve Tankel from Code Enforcement. From the community, we had Mary Chin from AACA, as well as Anthony Disidoro of the Alston Civic Association. In the hearing, ISD noted that like Boston, other cities such as New York and Chicago have seen an uptick in pest and rats due to the pandemic, since rodent food sources are being moved from commercial areas to residential areas. The increase in rat population is also due to the mild winter that we had, and the pandemic hit right when it was rat breeding season. ISD officials have been responding to this by stepping up on inspections and enforcements, dropping flyers on impacted areas around how to properly dispose of trash, and looking at methods such as using dry ice to kill rats. Commissioner Irish and Assistant Commissioner Boucher emphasized the importance of properly disposing of trash and preventing rat activities, so that making sure that lids are closed and that trash is properly separated. They also emphasized that reporting cases on 311 will make it easier for them to track and respond to rodent activities. We also heard from representatives from AACA, which is the Asian American Civic Association, and the Alston Civic Association. And they noted that rodents and illegal dumping have long been issues for their neighborhood, and suggested higher penalty fees for violators, more public education and enforcement to address these issues. And I certainly agree. It was an informative hearing. I want to thank City Councilor Braden for her partnership on this. I want to thank all my colleagues who were able to attend. You provided excellent feedback and questions. Pest control and prevention of illegal dumping have always been important quality of life issues for our residents. And with the pandemic, it's even more important that we keep our neighborhoods clean and healthy. This is a public health emergency, and it's also a safety emergency as well. I look forward to continuing working on this issue with my colleagues, and I want to give an opportunity to City Councilor Braden if she'd like to weigh in as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much for that thorough committee report. I don't see a blue hand from Councilor Braden, so we'll move on. Councilor Braden, are you good with that thorough report? Okay.
I'm good. Councillor Flynn has given a very comprehensive
Excellent.
report of the hearing. Thank you.
Wonderful. So docket 0935 will remain in the committee, and we'll have more opportunity to engage on that topic. And we'll move on to docket 0322.
Thank you. Docket 0322, order for hearing regarding the current state of cooperative housing in Boston and strategies for its further expansion.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councillor Edwards, who is chair of the Committee on Housing and Community Development. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, or Madam President, excuse me. The Committee on Housing and Community Development held a hearing on Tuesday on the order regarding the current state of cooperatives in Boston. The following individuals from the administration participated: Sheila Dillon, Chief of Housing; Tim Davis, Deputy Director of Policy Development for D&D. We also heard from Teresa and Maureen, also who work in D&D in different areas. The committee also heard testimony from John Seward, President of the Massachusetts Association of Cooperatives; Matt Thal, Vice President of the same association; Bill Brower, Director of Housing and Preservation and Policy at CDAC; Maggie Cohen, the Loan and Outreach Officer at the Cooperative Fund of New England; Jared Tunnels, Senior Vice President at the National Cooperative Bank; Casey Fannin, President of the National Cooperative Bank; and Grant Young, Trustee of the Symphony Area Renaissance. The committee discussed the history and current status of co-op housing today. The committee discussed the available resources offered by private and public-private partnerships, and also ways in which the city, through its already institutional programs for home ownership, can enhance access to cooperatives and make them part of the regular conversation. As demonstrated by many of the speakers, cooperatives are probably the most stable form of housing. They provide truly an accessible way of ownership through shared ownership. And for the most part, all of us were very excited as city councilors to hear about ways in which we could continue this conversation. Apologize in advance for forgetting my colleagues, but along with myself and the sponsor, Councillor Bach, also in attendance is Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Wu, Councillor Baker, Councillor Mejia, and Councillor Braden. I believe I have all of the councillors that attended. Again, I apologize. Oh, Councillor Janey, President Janey, my apologies. I've also attended the, I think, very robust, good conversation. I ask that we keep this into the committee so that we can have a working session to discuss enhancing these programs. And now, if with the president's permission, I would turn it over to the lead sponsor.
Thank you so much for that thorough report. You would. Okay, so thank you so much, Councillor Edwards, for that thorough report. As I mentioned yesterday in that hearing, it was also Councillor Bach's maiden speech. So that's how we were having that conversation. And I think Councillor Bach would like to just add a few words to talk about this. So Chair recognizes Councillor Bach.
Thank you, Madam President. And yes, I'll be brief. I thank Councillor Edwards for the thorough report and for running a great hearing, and all the people she mentioned who came and spoke. And I'm excited about next steps. And I think we have a real partner in D&D and wanting to do some substantive things to help make more of these co-ops happen and help a wider array of folks access the opportunity to live in cooperative housing. So I'm really excited about that. I said this yesterday, but I think it bears repeating. When I gave my maiden speech on cooperative housing, it was, on February 5th, it was in a very different world in some sense. But I think what's so notable about cooperative housing is that it could be relevant on February 5th as a way to try to, have stable communities anchored in the city where the housing market just that's going up and up and everything is booming. And then you come to a situation 8 months later where we're worrying about foreclosure of large apartment buildings, where we're not sort of sure exactly what the future holds. And yet again, they're seeing nationwide much lower arrearage issues and foreclosure rates in co-op housing. And it really it's in a down market as well that co-ops can really help keep our communities whole. So I think, and really that's because what co-ops do is they take housing a little bit out of the capitalist boom and bust cycle, while also allowing people to build ownership. And so to me, just that change in circumstance, and yet the fact that it feels more pressing even than when I gave the speech for us to be talking about co-op housing really underscores for me how important a priority this is, and how much it's a set of tools we need to have in our toolbox for the next 6 months, a year, on into the future. So grateful to the chair and grateful to you, Madam President, and to all of my colleagues for coming and remembering that it was my maiden speech way back when. So
thank you so much. Docket 0322 will remain in committee. We'll now move on to motions, orders, and resolutions. And we will start with docket 1003. Madam Clerk.
Docket 1003, Councilor Baker offered the following home rule petition for a special law regarding an act directing the City of Boston Police Department to waive the maximum age requirement for police officer Darrell P. LaMonica.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Counselor Baker. Counselor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a home rule petition for a special law regarding an act directing the City of Boston Police Department to waive the maximum age requirement for police officers for Darrell P. LaMonica. This will amend the Massachusetts general laws to specifically waive the age limit for Darrell to enter the Boston Police Academy. Darrell was previously a recruit in the Boston Police Academy from September to November 2017, class 5717. When he was 38 years old. Due to personal issues within his family and putting his family first, his academics slipped and ultimately he had to step down from the Boston Police Academy. Darrell took the last civil service police exam in March 2019 and is currently going through an extensive process to enter into the academy. He's 3 months over the age limit, which is why he would need an age waiver to enter the next Boston Police Academy. Darrell's a lifelong Boston resident and currently resides in the Deposit area of Dorchester and believes he will be an asset to our law enforcement agency. This is my fourth age waiver I've done, and only one person has gone all the way through. This is basically us just giving Darrell a shot at a second chance. I would like to defer to the committee chair to see if she wants to have a hearing or not. If she's okay with it, I would love to suspend and pass, because I think if we have Darrell in front of us, he's not going to necessarily want to talk about what was going on in his life at that time. I don't know if people remember the gentleman that was paralyzed from the neck down over in Matt's district near the Arboretum there. That was his brother-in-law there, and had some other deaths and some health issues. One of his children ended up hurting himself when he was in the academy. He's not going to want to go through that stuff. He said to me that he hadn't been in a classroom setting for over 20 years, being 38. He was only a high school graduate, and said he wasn't really used to the books. Again, this would just be us giving him a second chance. This needs to go up the State House and go through that whole process there. And ultimately, if the police don't think that he's fit, they have the ultimate say on whether he enters into the cadet class, this next class or not. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Counselor Baker. And given that this is legislation and a really important issue to discuss, including whether or not we've got the right age in place. One, we have to ask ourselves, do we have the right age limits and requirements in place if we have to keep requesting waivers? With all of that said, docket, let me make sure I get it right. Docket 1003 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations, and hopefully we will have that hearing quickly so that we can get this moved through the council.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So that is being assigned to the Committee on Government Operations. But before I do that, I apologize. I did not give people the opportunity who wanted to sign their name or to speak. So I did not see anyone who wants to speak. If anyone wants to add their name to this legislation, Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Flynn, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Bach, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Braden. Please also add the chair. Thank you. And Councilor, please also add Councilor Mejia. And Councilor Flynn, did you want to say a few words?
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. I just want to go on record in support of this. Boston has always been a city of giving people second chances and third chances, and we've always given people the benefit of the doubt. And I want to strongly go on record in support of Mr. LaMonica. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. And as I mentioned, docket 1003, which is this docket, is going to GovOps. We'll now move on to docket 1004. Madam Clerk.
1004, Councilors Flaherty and Flynn offer the following order for hearing regarding relief for our local cultural, civic, and war veteran clubs. during the COVID-19 public health emergency.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the
Thank you, Madam President. I introduced this hearing order because I've been hearing from local clubs and posts and halls across the city regarding the difficulty that they're having and continue to experience during COVID. They've been all shut down, as we all know, many of them throughout all of my district colleagues' districts, and many of them play an important role here in our city. And so they've been shut down since March and have not been able to viably open. We all know the importance of our local cultural, civic, and our VFW post, and know how much these places contribute greatly to our communities and to the vibrancy of our city. We also know that it's oftentimes these clubs, posts, and halls that are hosting fundraisers for youth organizations and a variety of different causes, events for our veterans and seniors, and also offering inexpensive places for neighbors to gather, civic associations to gather, et cetera, whether it's to mourn the loss of a loved one or to celebrate a happy time in someone's life, hosting a community meeting or simply spending time with one another. It's more often than not, it's the local halls and the posts and the clubs that provide that venue. So we also know that they themselves, they rely on event space rental fees as well as these fundraisers and the money that comes in from sort of the bar and the food portion of it. And they haven't been able to generate any income over the last six plus months. So despite their inability to operate, many of them are still incurring expenses such as upcoming renewal fees and license fees, as well as rental and mortgage payments, property tax, utilities, et cetera. So they're going through some very difficult times at the moment. And I wanted to see whether or not we as a city can come together to try to identify additional ways. I know that our licensing board, ISD, small businesses teams have been doing yeoman's work trying to help them out. However, I feel that despite our best efforts, a lot of times our hands are tied at the local level because we depend so much on a lot of the state regulatory stuff. So we're at the risk of losing many of these precious clubs unless we explore more ways to provide relief for them. And whether that's reaching out to the ABCC, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, explore waiving the renewal fees, whether it's having conversations about waiving the meals tax and or other fees. So while I know the state and here in Boston, we're revenue strapped because of COVID, I think we owe it to these places to have a public dialogue about whether these ongoing difficulties, through the ongoing difficulties, we could potentially provide more relief for them so that they can stay afloat and remain vital components of all of our neighborhoods. So thank you for the time, Madam President. Look forward to an expedited hearing and partner obviously with the lone veteran on the council, Council Flynn, as a co-sponsor, and the work that he's done, not just in our neighborhood here in South Boston, but across the city with respect to our local veterans post and veteran halls. So he can speak probably firsthand to the difficulties that they're all having. I know that the Carter Post was one that had reached out to me. That's in Council Campbell's district. So again, trying to do the best we can for them. They're a vital component to our communities, and we want to try to do the best we can to make sure that when we get through COVID-19, that they're still standing and we're still able to access them, and they're still be able to host the events that they normally host for residents in our city. So thank you very much, and look forward to an expedited hearing and encourage others to join in as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Council Flaherty, for including me as a co-sponsor of a cultural, civic, and veterans clubs. Organizations are important. They're an important part of our neighborhood and community. So we should think about ways to help them during this pandemic. As Councilor Flaherty mentioned, many of these clubs and organizations were shut down during the pandemic. They lost a significant source of funding because they can't host events. It would be a huge loss to our community if these organizations can no longer open due to financial constraints. And we should discuss ways how we can help these clubs in these difficult and trying times. I know many people use these clubs for, as Councilor Flaherty mentioned, for weddings or for funeral events after or birthday parties, but they're a great way to have nice family-related events at a decent price. And a lot of these clubs host civic organization meetings. They host so many meetings and events that benefit the neighborhoods and benefit the community. So we just want to give them a fair chance to stay open. Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for asking me to be a co-sponsor. And thank you, Council President Cheney.
Thank you so much. Seeing no discussion, would anyone like to add their names? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Baker, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Bach, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Wu, Councilor Braden, and please also add the chair. The docket 1004 will be referred to the Committee on Small Business and Workforce Development. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 1005?
Docket 1005, Councilor Bach offered the following order for hearing regarding a Boston Sesquicentennial Commission to mark the 250th anniversary of 1776 through inclusive historic preservation and commemoration.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Down the street from my house, there's a wooden house that was built in 1787. It's the oldest existing house on Beacon Hill. It predates all the bricks, and it was built by a guy named George Middleton, who was a Black Bostonian, built the house himself. And by the time he built it, he had already served as a colonel in a Black militia during the Revolutionary War, and actually received a flag from John Hancock, who lived around the corner, and ended up being a really major civic leader throughout the Revolutionary period and afterwards, and was one of the first people to push for equal school rights for Black children in Boston back in 1800. And I mention him because, you know, his house is a stop on the tour of the Beacon Hill neighborhood that's put together by the Museum of African American History. And it's one piece of a really rich African American history that goes back to Revolutionary times and before here in Boston. And, you know, I was thinking a lot last week when the Trump administration sort of said, you know, we need to have a kind of jingoistic America First type of curriculum for our students. And also, you know, we're going to have a 1776 commission and really, like, you know, focus on a particular kind of two-dimensional cardboard story of American history. I was thinking about the fact that I think the onus is really on us in Boston to tell a much more inclusive and more real story as we approach the 250th birthday of the country. And I think it's important to note, I wasn't around, but back in 1976, when we had the bicentennial, that was a major focus of activity in Boston. It's a great tourism draw for us. It's a chance to tell that story that we, you know, tell to our students on the Freedom Trail, et cetera. And I think that if we don't actively as a city grab the reins and say, how are we going to commemorate this? We could easily end up kind of on autopilot with a less inclusive history, with kind of going to some of those chestnuts. And I think it's just important for people to know that the bicentennial really created a moment in Boston for looking again at our history. It created a whole preservationist moment in the country. And here in Boston, we created the Landmarks Commission in 1975 in the lead up to that bicentennial. And as I think about inclusive history, it's not just about what events we plan. And, you know, there's a group, Revolutionary Spaces, that did a great model back in March. It was the 250th anniversary of the Boston Massacre. And they had a bunch of folks representing the diverse community of people who showed up that night and the people who got killed, and then have commissioned a play by a Boston-based Black playwright from the perspective of Crispus Attucks. So they've given us a great example. And a commission like this, one thing it can do is, you know, commission events and plays and things like that. But the other piece is, what is the regulatory infrastructure that we need to really have more inclusive historic preservation in this city. Because when we created the Landmarks Commission, it was, like I said, we were early on that wave, but now we've really fallen behind because the legislation that created the Landmarks Commission says that to be landmarked, your thing has to be of greater than local significance. And what that means functionally is that a lot of the buildings that have a real community local significance to us, we're not able to landmark. Which isn't true. San Francisco lets you do local landmarks. Lots of other places have created that capacity. We don't have it. And so we're often stuck just with demolition delay. And I think Article 85 in our local zoning code has really served mostly to frustrate people, both actually on the historic preservation end and the construction and development end for years now. And so to me, leading up to this 250th anniversary is a great moment to think about, what changes do we need to the state level enabling act? What changes do we need to our own zoning commission language? And then how are we going to plan a really diverse set of commemorations to mark this? And really, I think Boston will be in the spotlight in that moment. And so I think we can help show the whole country what it means to celebrate and retrieve a really richer history that includes everybody, that says, hey, there were Black Bostonians, there were immigrants, there were people who were not like writing their names, on those documents who were central to this moment. And historical practice, I speak partly as a historian, historical practice has really advanced on that front. And a lot of our architecture for historical commemoration in the city world is sort of stuck back in a like great men, right? Like important white men, important kind of like, here's a set of dates, and history as a practice has really become much more, much richer, I think. And I want us to be thinking proactively about that. And you aren't going to be able to lay that groundwork without really pulling a lot of these threads together. So that's the reason why I'd like to explore in this hearing order, setting up a commission so that we're having that conversation intentionally and over time. And I did bring as a show and tell, I have the Boston Streets book from 1976, the bicentennial, was in commemoration, and we actually put in like little illustrations of that's John Hancock's house and stuff. And it's a reminder of we're going to make a lot of decisions as a city about what, even in terms of materials, commemoration of this event looks like. And I think we should go exactly the opposite direction of what the Trump administration is proposing. So I'd love to start this conversation, and thank you so much, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm not seeing any discussion, but before we move on, I'm probably one of the few people on this body that was around in 1976, not 1776, but 1976. I was a little kid. And I do remember how much excitement there was over the bicentennial. And I was very excited to see this on the agenda because I saw this as an opportunity to do just that, make sure that we are telling a much more accurate story and in a history that is much more inclusive. So I'm glad that you have that here. Would anyone like to add their name to this hearing order? Thank you. Before I give you those names, Madam Clerk, I'm going to call upon Councilor Flynn to say a few words. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Please add my name. I just want to say that the proposal by Councilor Bach is outstanding. It's excellent. And it's a great way for especially young people in the public school system to learn about the history of our city, especially about people that really are not covered or history didn't include them in there. As Councilor Bach mentioned, I'm working with city officials and the Ellis Neighborhood Association there's a street in the South End on Columbus Avenue. It's named for Alan Rohan Crite. He's a African-American artist, one of the best artists in the country. And that little area of Columbus Avenue is named after him. We're trying to fix it up, put money into it. But he's one of the most significant artists in the country, and not many people know about him. He lived in the South End his entire life. And he would be a great example, a great role model for other young people that want to be an artist. So there's a great history out there in our city. It's just not told. And what Council Bach proposed is a great way to recognize the history that hasn't been included for so many years. So just want to say thank you to Councilor Bach.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't going to speak, and then I think you and Councilor Flynn really spoke to the inclusivity piece here, and I just want to applaud Councilor Bach for bringing this forward, but also starting with the story in which she did. You know, there is tremendous history with respect to Black Bostonians that is never taught in the Boston Public Schools, sadly. And some of that history I learned when I went off to college outside of Boston, which is really unfortunate. And so I think this is an incredible opportunity and time, particularly in this moment in time, to focus on the positive stories, the groundbreaking stories that transform this city and this country. I was just recently meeting with Dr. Kindy based on what he's going to be doing at BU in terms of assisting or creating an institute to help us all make our institutions in this country an anti-racist society. And in his pitch to folks who don't understand why his work is so important at BU and for, not just for Boston, but for the country, he was talking about the history of Boston and how we've always been at the forefront of not sort of gradual progress, but asking for, you know, absolute emancipation, and how Blacks and whites in partnership and together were at the forefront centuries ago, pushing to end slavery, pushing for everyone to have equality, and how many have lost that sense of history. And that if you are from the city of Boston, why we have such pride, one of the things is because of the leadership of all these folks who came before us in making Boston the first in many respects. And so this is an opportunity to really dive in deep and do it across the city. It's so exciting. So kudos to Councilor Bach for introducing this, and please add my name. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Now, if we could have a show of physical hands for all the other hands we're going to add. So I think you have Councilor Flynn already. Madam Clerk, please also add Councilor Braden, Councilor Baker, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Wu, and please also add the chair. Docket 1005 will be referred to the Committee on Arts, Culture, Tourism, and Special Events. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 1006?
Docket 1006, Councilor Mejia offered the following resolution recognizing September as Suicide Prevention Month in the city of Boston.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Before we move forward, I'd like to suspend the rules and add Councilor Asabi George as an original co-sponsor.
Seeing and hearing no objections, Councilor Asabi George has been added.
Thank you. And I would also like to just put out a trigger warning for those who are listening to my speech, as I will be discussing the issue of suicide. Writing the speech was tough, almost as hard as it is reading it. Nearly everyone in our office, myself included, has lost someone in their lives to suicide or has themselves struggled with mental health issues. I was raised by my grandparents until I was 5 years old in the Dominican Republic, while my parents left in pursuit of the American dream. And I remember my grandfather sold candy out of a wooden box, and I was his #1 client. I don't remember much about him, but I do remember that he went missing and later learned that he had committed suicide. And we all know the battles that everyone is carrying. I also, a cousin of mine committed suicide in 2015. And when we think about the stigma that exists in a lot of communities when we talk about suicide, it's always one of those things that gets hushed. And so much so that even myself as a teenager, I too tried to commit suicide. But at the time, my mom was really afraid and was so afraid that I was gonna be removed from the home that she didn't take me to the hospital or didn't seek any counseling for me for fear that I would be removed from the home. And also for fear that if this would be on my record, that I would never get a job in America. And it's important for us to talk about the stigma that people carry as it relates to suicide, because there's a lot of myths out there as it relates to it. As a survivor, I'm grateful to be alive to witness the strength in my struggle. As a survivor, I know there are also so many young people right now who are battling depression and sitting at home suffering in silence. And we're calling for this resolution, not just to bring light to the strength in our own journey, but to say that there are people out there who are currently struggling. And for those who are out there listening, know that you are loved, you are valued, and you are needed. The number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. We encourage everyone to reach out to their loved ones, to check in on them, especially during these times. And I'd like to suspend the rules and move with this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilor Mejia for adding me as an original co-sponsor. This resolution, for sharing her struggles and her family's struggles with suicide. Prior to the pandemic, I filed a hearing order to look at the city's suicide prevention resources as the suicide rate in Boston increased 17% between 2015 and 2019. Suicide prevention work is critically important and needs to be incorporated into every aspect of the city's work. We've talked about it with the best clinicians work, and then in April, Councilor Campbell and I co-sponsored a resolution urging the city to include mental health support as part of the public health response to the pandemic. As a body, we recognized May as Mental Health Awareness Month, and in July as Black, Indigenous, People of Color Mental Health Month. It is clear that we need to prioritize mental health supports, not just to prevent suicide, but also to ensure our residents are able to live healthy lives. I look forward to having a robust conversation about this necessary work through the creation of a mental health commission. I am very grateful to Councilor Mejia for her leadership in declaring September as Suicide Prevention Month, and for joining me in prioritizing mental health supports throughout the city and making them widely accessible. Thank you again, Councilor Mejia, and thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief. I just want to thank the makers, Councilors Mejia and Asabi George, for the continued work on mental health issues and eliminating the stigma, but also, of course, putting forth ideas and solutions with respect to how the city can do better, whether it is providing more resources to organizations on the ground who are doing great work, especially in communities of color that are harder to reach, with respect to mental health supports, prioritizing it not as an afterthought, but making it a part of every single conversation, particularly now in this moment when we are all experiencing collective trauma because of COVID-19, police brutality, racism, just the topics of discussion. And certainly last but not least, I really want to thank Councilor Mejia for being vulnerable in this moment and sharing your story to those who are watching and to so many others. People often ask, why do we share our stories? It's one, so people see themselves in us and see the humanity in us and know that we see them. But most importantly, hopefully it encourages or inspires someone to reach out and get help or supports. So thank you so much for being vulnerable in this space. Vulnerability is power. Thank you. And thank you again, Councilor Asabi George, for your continued work on these issues. Please add my name, Madam President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to thank the makers and thank Councilor Mejia also for sharing her story. I have lost too many people this way over the course of my 20s. And I think it's so important for us to talk about. And I think it's really important when it comes to suicide prevention to just for everyone to know that it needs the opposite of fatalism from us, because I think sometimes people think, oh, well, what can you do? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. All of the evidence suggests that every little thing that you do to, whether like make a particular building like less attractive as an option, every like a little conversation with somebody at the right moment, having a number that's easy to call, having it like suicide is something that people, the profile is that people attempt it in a moment. And then if they're prevented from doing it in that moment, they very frequently do not return to do it. So it really is something where the interventions that we can put in on all sort of facets of public health can really save lives. And I just think it's so important to stress that. And I will say there's one thing that I'm hopeful about is I think Seth Moulton from our congressional delegation actually got a bill through that's sitting on the president's desk right now. Hopefully he'll sign it, which would make a national suicide hotline number 988, which would help. Councilor Mejia gave the current one, but I think a 3-digit number, it's another one of those little things that if it were just easy and everybody knew it, it helps with the destigmatization. And also it just increases the chance that someone's going to call in that moment of acute crisis. So I just really want to appreciate Councilors Mejia and Asabi George for bringing this forward and say that I think it's an issue that just, we all know, like when it happens in your family or in your friend circle, it's devastating and the impacts spiral for so long. And so I think, yeah, it's just we all need to do everything we can on this. So thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say thank you to the makers, to Councilor Mejia and Councilor Asabi George. And as Councilor Campbell mentioned, Councilor Mejia relaying that story helps so many people across our city. They listen to the story and know that they're also in difficult places, but sharing your story impacts a lot of people in such a positive way. So I want to say thank you to Councilor Mejia for taking the initiative on this important resolution. And I also wanted to highlight what Councilor Bach mentioned is we also have 22 veterans a day that commit suicide throughout the country. And that's something we can also think about and continue to work on. And I know my colleagues on the council have been very active and engaged on this issue. So I just want to say thank you to Councilor Mejia and to Councilor Asabi George. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Seeing no more discussion, please a show of physical hands for those who would like to add their name. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Flynn, Councilor Braden, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Edwards, and Councilor Wu. Please also add the chair. Councilors Mejia and Asabi George seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1006. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Sorry. Docket 1006, Councilor Arroyo.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo, yes. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Braden.
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey.
Yes.
Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor Mejia.
Yes.
Councilor Mejia, yes. Councilor O'Malley.
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley, yes. And Councilor Wu.
Yes.
Councilor Wu, yes. Madam President, docket number 1006 received a unanimous vote.
Thank you so much. Docket 1006 has been adopted, and now we will move on to personnel orders. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 1007?
Docket 1007, Councilor Janey for Councilor Braden.
Councilor Braden seeks seeks passage of docket 1007. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Docket 1007, Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Docket number 1007 has passed unanimously.
Thank you so much. Docket 1007 has passed. Madam Clerk, could you read 1008?
Thank you. Docket number 1008, Counselor Janey offered the following order.
Thank you. The chair seeks passage of docket 1008. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Sorry, yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Madam President, docket number 1008 has received a unanimous vote.
Thank you so much. Docket 1008 has passed. Moving on in our agenda, I don't believe we have late files, which is great. No late files. And I don't think anyone, oh, wait a second. Counselor Wu, are you trying to remove something from the green sheets? Or did you have a late file?
Oh, sorry. I think I'm early. I would like to make an announcement about.
Okay, we're not there yet.
Yeah, later. Sorry.
Yep. Okay. So no late files, no green sheets. Excellent. In terms of the consent agenda, I don't think there have been any additions to the consent agenda. So the chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Madam President, the consent agenda was passed unanimously.
Thank you so much. The consent agenda has been adopted. And so now we will move on to announcements. The chair recognizes Counselor Wu. Counselor Wu, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to report back on the ZBA nominee situation, just to give everyone an update because I had promised one at the last meeting. So as it stood, again, we confirmed several of the nominees last week, and there were 2 remaining nominees in committee, the full member and the alternate for the architect position. There was some conversation during our hearing or committee meeting about whether the proposed alternate nominee should in fact be a full member, just given the importance of representation on the board and expertise, and also just clearly that the vast majority of people of color who would be represented on the board are all in alternate slots now. So there's been some discussion and back and forth. We straightened out the criteria so that in fact this proposed alternate nominee would be eligible for the open full member seat that is the mayor's decision to appoint with some neighborhood association ties. And I'm told that the administration is weighing that nominee, Hansi Barraza, for that role, along with others who have expressed interest in that particular position. So they had asked us to hold off instead of taking action and pulling anything from the green sheets this week, just to give it a little bit more time as they're figuring out what decision the mayor would like to make in terms of his nominees for that full seat, and then we will act accordingly. So just wanted everyone to know that, again, it is not the council. We are acting as quickly as we can, but in constant conversations with the administration on resolving this. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. The chair recognizes Councillor Asabi George. Councillor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Madam President. I'd like to acknowledge that today is Recovery Day here in the city of Boston. Every year we recognize September as National Recovery Month to increase awareness and understanding about mental illness and substance use disorders. The theme for this year's Recovery Month is Join the Voices for Recovery, Celebrating Connections, which symbolizes the importance of celebrating the diversity of people from all walks of life, striving for recovery and ending the stigma around mental illness and substance use disorder. Today, I'm wearing a little bit of purple in the official color of Recovery Month to express my solidarity and support for individuals living in recovery, as well as those who are just starting on their path. Recovery looks different for everyone, and you are not alone in this journey. I also want to extend my deepest gratitude to our service providers here in Boston, providing critical recovery support services. In honor of Recovery Month, I'd like to encourage those at home to consider making a donation to the Massachusetts Organization for Addiction Recovery. MORE does incredible work for our most vulnerable residents. For anyone who is struggling right now, please reach out to Substance Use and Mental Health Services Administration Behavioral Treatment Services and their national helpline by calling 1-800-662-HELP, 1-800-662-HELP. Thank you again, Madam President and colleagues for indulging me.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councillor Bach. Councillor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This isn't my announcement, but I did want to thank the clerk for bringing my district into the room with her today. She's had a picture of the public garden behind her the whole meeting.
Oh. I have those all over my house.
Yeah, well, especially with all the roll call votes now, I felt very comfortable with there in the background.
I'm here to please.
Of course, now I'm going to cause you trouble. You'll have to like rotate the district image.
Right.
No, I just wanted to briefly acknowledge a name that will be in the tributes, Amelia Thomas. She was 98 and passed last week. She's been a really important longtime member of our community at Amy Lowell House in the West End. And her daughter, Louise Thomas, is also a major community leader in the West End. And I've just been thinking a lot about how much it meant to her and to the community at Amy Lowell, which is, for folks who don't know, subsidized housing. It's a mix of families and seniors, and really very community oriented, and also in a kind of vertical neighborhood that is the West End. The Amy Lowell community room is really the living room for the entire neighborhood. I mean, we have in normal times every public meeting, every gathering there. And I was just thinking about how much it's meant for someone like her to get to 98, getting to continue to live in that multi-generational community, continue to live in the heart of Boston, you know, on a fixed income with housing that she can continue to afford. And I really wanted to express my condolences to Louise and the whole Thomas family, and just honor her. And, you know, the West End, it's one of our littlest and sometimes less well-remembered neighborhoods, but it's a community, and Amelia was part of the heart of it. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. I have just a couple of announcements. One, I'm just really glad that this was a quick, short meeting. But let me do my couple of announcements. One, I want to give a big shout out and congratulations to Lorraine on Central staff on the birth of her first grandchild. Luciana, yes, give it up. I think I am the only grandmother on this city council. So from one grandmother to the other, I say, welcome to the club. It's the best club to be in. So congratulations, Lorraine. Congratulations to your daughter and your beautiful granddaughter. And so that is celebrating the birth. But we've also lost a number of people. We continue to lose people every day in 2020. And I thought it was just really important that we mark and acknowledge the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She has been an incredible leader. I don't need to tell folks on this body what she has done for this country and what she has done for women. But I'm really grateful for her as someone who is leading the most diverse city council in Boston's history with a record number of women. Folks, we talk about it and sometimes people get upset. Why are we always talking about the women? But people have to acknowledge this is very recent history. Just in 2012, there was one woman on the council. That was Ayanna. 2014, 2 women, Ayanna and Michelle. 2016, 4 women. 2018 went to 6, and in 2020, it went to 8. So I don't know what we're gonna do in 2022, if we're gonna get to 10, but that's the goal. And I bring that up because there's a quote that Ruth Bader Ginsburg talked about. She talked about women and the importance of women and representation. And she was responding to a question about, how many women on the Supreme Court. And so she said, so now the perception is, yes, women are here to stay. And when I'm sometimes asked, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? And I say, when there are 9, people are shocked. But there'd been 9 men and nobody ever raised a question about that. She said that back in 2012 when we only had 1 woman on the city council. So I'm just really grateful for, as I'm sure all of you are, for all that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has done for women and for moving this country forward. And we will also obviously close the council in tribute to her. Any other announcements? Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Yes, just a brief moment of clarity. I hear your point there, but the Madam Clerk, she was a pioneer. When I ran for the council in 2000, there were actually 4 women that served on the council. Clerk Feeney was one of 4 women. And then when I joined the council, there were 3 women. So just for historical correction.
Yes, yes. But in 2012, it was just 1. When in 2009, when Ayanna first came, you were on the council with her and then you left and Frank joined us. And then Ayanna was by herself, yes. And I'm looking to Councilor O'Malley, our historian, and now we've got Councilor Bach, another historian, to make sure that we're keeping the record straight. But thank you for that, Councilor Flaherty. Any other announcements? It's gonna be a record. It's 1:22, no other announcements, great. So that we'll just move on.
I just wanted to, sorry, Councilor, Madam President, I just wanted to thank everyone. No, I just wanted to thank everybody for your text messages and your thank you. I'm incredibly grateful to be serving alongside you all. Thank you so much.
We're grateful to have you with us. Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. We will now move on to our memorials. We will adjourn our meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilor Bach, Amelia Thomas. For Councilors Baker, Campbell, and Asabi George, Carol Robinson. For Councilor Edwards, William Lamb, and Supreme Judicial Court Chief Justice Ralph Gantz. And on behalf of the entire City Council, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. A moment of silence, please. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of the aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, September 30th at 12 noon for the safety of the general public and all those involved. This meeting will be held virtually and posted online. Viewers can watch the council meeting live on YouTube by visiting boston.gov/city-council-TV. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. This council meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
you
you.
too.
Enjoy
Thank
this
you.
weather.
Bye.
Bye.